everyone, welcome to a new video. This video will be analyzing the motion, "This house prefers a world in which individuals cannot aspire to or conceive of achieving a standard of living beyond that which would be sufficient for a middle-class lifestyle." I'll be doing it from the proposition's perspective, i.e. that I'll be making the proposition's case. So this is a counterfactuals motion because this house prefers a world. So we're, in a world that isn't the status quo. There are a few things that I would do before heading into the argumentation in terms of setup. The first thing is I'm going to establish the comparative and make it clear what the debate is and not about. I did make a video on comparatives and how you can establish a comparative in setup. So the first part of setup is, what is the comparative? And there are a few things that I would note. This debate is not about whether or not people can become rich or accumulate wealth. Rather, the aspiration or conception of a lifestyle beyond one of a middle-class lifestyle. How did I identify this? I read the motion and I clearly saw that the key words here were aspire and conceive of. So that means that individuals can have money, in fact, a lot of money, but not spend it on an upper class lifestyle, or as a lot of people call it, a luxurious lifestyle. Although this is intuitive because you're motion reading, you should still be justifying certain things. My justification for this is that, as the motion suggests, you're focusing on a lifestyle, which means it's about how you spend your money, and accumulation of wealth can still exist because people still may pursue things in this world like entrepreneurship, maybe because they have passions, or they may succeed in something, or continuous inheritance. And I think this is important to know because this house prefers motions. Although it is a different world, everything else is still the same. The only difference is what the motion is asking or what the motion is suggesting that has changed. But more than what I've just shown, you can take it a step further to say that these two things can coexist because people in the status quo, like in the current world, may have narratives or are driven by morals that say that you can be paid highly for your achievements and contributions, but you don't need to spend it as much. And those are certain morals that exist. An example that you could use is Keanu Reeves, an actor who gets paid a lot, but wears quote-unquote ordinary clothing. When you see them on the street, he looks like he doesn't wear like he's wearing, like as if he's very, very rich. So that's the comparative that I've established in terms of what the debate is not about. The second thing that I would establish is what do the both sides look like in this debate. In terms of proposition, I would establish our counterfactual is that people wouldn't imagine or aspire such a lifestyle beyond a middle class one. And here's where I define it. It's a lifestyle that surrounds spending, on basic necessities or accessing basic comforts. So, for example, you would buy a Corolla rather than buying a Ferrari. Or you'd be buying unbranded clothing and wear it for a while rather than a need to buy branded clothing and Gucci shoes every second week. And given that this is a motion that affects the way that actors behave and what their interests would be, it means this is the new norm and people conceptualize to the bar, which is a middle-class lifestyle. Good proposition teams would also establish what opposition would look like. On opposition's world, they would have to defend the status quo because in this house prefers a world motions, opposition's burden is to defend the status quo. So what does the status quo look like? It looks like a continuous pursuit and aspiration of a luxurious lifestyle, and the norms and sources of information like, social media and narratives encourage this. So now I've established the comparative, what both sides are defending. The second thing that I do on prop is I could mention my burdens. I did make a video on establishing burdens and saying that they are kind of like, shouldn't be explicitly said all the time, especially if they're intuitive. But because this video I'm analyzing the motion, these are the burdens I think proposition would have to prove. The first one is proposition would have to prove this lifestyle is more preferable to a lifestyle than that for individuals in terms of compared to a luxurious lifestyle. Secondly, I would also have to prove that this lifestyle accrues benefits for the broader society and not only individuals themselves. Because, it's not only on the individual level, but lifestyles also do affect individuals outside of themselves. So with that said, I think there are three possible arguments a proposition team could run. The first one is encouraging charity from higher income individuals. And here's where the comparatives framing becomes quite important. And here you can see whatever you set up in the debate shouldn't only just be there because you have to give an 8-minute P1. It should be helping your case. It should be framing your case that can allow you to make arguments. Because I've showed in setup that individuals can still have money, they just wouldn't spend it like crazy. This means that it could probably encourage things like charity. The way you could make the argument or craft the argument, I think, goes three ways. The first way is just showing what the problem is in the status quo on the current world. And here you can just show that, individuals, especially who are very wealthy, have a lot of money and often have a hedonic treadmill because, they want to buy happiness, right? Like people believe money buys happiness. So this is probably bad because it probably means that people only spend their money on themselves or a dream lifestyle. They want to show off, all those things. The second part of the argument just becomes, how do we solve this? I think it can go two ways. Firstly, you can show we solve this because if people can't imagine such a lifestyle, such as, going to a different country every single holiday, they'll likely have a lot of excess money and won't need spending it all because, basic necessities wouldn't need R1 million, right? So it means they're probably going to try to spread their money from one form or another. Secondly, if the problem in the status quo is that money is a status signaler and, for legacy, it's quite difficult to achieve a lot of wealth and is more tangible than leaving, a positive impact to society because it helps their legacy. So pretty much the link is that people have money as a status signaler, as a legacy signaler. But now, on our side of the house, if that isn't something that can be a form of legacy, another way of getting a legacy is, engaging in charitable causes that may be, the best possible thing for you. So that was the link. It was a bit messy, sorry. Then the last thing is, in terms of this argument, is what are the potential impacts this argument could have? I think you can talk about how, you can help society as a whole. So communities are likely, to be grown, especially lower income communities. You could also talk about how charity doesn't only have to go to lower income backgrounds. It could also go to social movements. And, if this is also another way they can help their legacy because, charity can be tied to legacy, then you can just show like, look, you also have social movements. That's a possible argument. The second possible argument a proposition team could run is a middle-class lifestyle is beneficial for individuals themselves and also to the broader society. You could split the argument up. And here, the first thing that I could do in this argument is that I would outline there are a few problems in one's life that comes when you live a lifestyle more than a middle-class one. And this argument could probably just focus on individuals with a lot of money, those who have a middle-class income also. Because it is true that individuals can have a middle-class income, and this is the characterization of the argument, but they can still also spend on a luxurious lifestyle. For example, you could get a recent salary bonus, and now you can start spending on luxurious items. For instance, you start getting more branded clothing every 2 months because you got a new bonus. So this argument could affect both rich people and middle-class income individuals. So the way that you can, analyze this argument is the first fold is that individuals are more materialistic. Why is this true? People often tie themselves and their worth to how many things they buy. As I said earlier on, it's a status signaler. There's also a hedonic treadmill that you try to get more stuff because we're inherently hedonists. You could also analyze by saying that people constantly compare themselves to other people with similar lifestyles, and it eventually becomes a competition. That's the problem you first set out. Then you show on our side of the house we don't do that. Because number one, people are probably going to now start to find other ways of finding happiness, making memories, going out with friends, as now they quote unquote have enough money in the world. There isn't a need to be more materialistic. But secondly, if you try to tie your worth to who you are as a person and the things you do, like investing in yourself, for example, or donating, because now you're tying your worth to something else. So you're probably going to do the things that I just mentioned. In terms of a second level, or a separate argument rather, I think this is a separate argument, is how this harms the environment. Here you could just show that firstly, many aspects of a luxurious lifestyle, people have excessive consumption, carbon intensive travel. This can this can negatively impact the environment. You can show how this gets worse over time, because wealthy people also set the tone of consumption. So because now the rich people are going to Dubai every, 6 weeks, every 2 months, every month, people with a middle class income will try to do that also whenever they get like a bonus, for example, or in their holidays. And the impacts of this argument, so the specific one, is that a healthy investment to, the environment just like doesn't harm the environment, I guess. Sorry, that was a bit circular, but the impact there is quite intuitive. But I did miss the impact of the first argument of materialism. There you could suggest that like people have more time for themselves and grow, as they aren't just wasting time on a never-ending lifestyle. You know what I mean? Cool. The last possible argument. So just in summary, thus far, we have an argument around charity, we have an argument around materialism and, investing in yourself, and we have an argument around the environment. The last possible argument I think a proposition team could run is that we have less elitism. And I think the premise of that argument, again, comes down to there is going to be a less of a focus on symbols of wealth on our side of the house. Because if people tie their worth to, being richer, if they tie their worth to how much money they have, it probably means they'll only have respect for someone who's much, much more rich. Whereas now on our side of the house, there wouldn't be much of a difference between you and someone like Mark Zuckerberg, because you're probably going to wear the same clothes, you're probably going to live a similar lifestyle. The impacts of that is we could probably keep the rich a bit more accountable, because when they do wrong, we probably focus on things like common values and not give them the pedestal because, they have money, they're creating jobs for people with their large companies. But also, there also is probably going to be like another impact that you could bring on an individual level, that there's like a less of a feeling of being left out or being much different, like you seeing yourself as worthless, as you and people with a lot of money, as I said, don't have a lot of differences. So this means there's less of a sense of inferiority. So again, this impact, the first one is around accountability. This one's a sense of respect. Like when you stand next to Mark Zuckerberg, do you feel that he's a better human being than you or not? But those are the 4 potential arguments I think a proposition team could run. And that's how I would have set it up if I were doing the debate. Thank you for popping by.